I wanted to talk about a newsletter I just put out, answer a couple questions I got this week from people, talk about, what else do I want to talk about? Yeah, just what's going on, and answer any questions that people might have if they jump on live with me. So, for those of you who don't know too, so I have been trying to consistently be a little bit more present on Facebook with my lives. So, and I also know that not everybody loves to watch a video in order to listen to the content. So I've been downloading the audio version of each Facebook Live and putting it up on my SoundCloud, and then also a video on YouTube, just so if there's people who prefer listening as opposed to watching, it's another place to be able to access the information. So on my SoundCloud, you'll see it's called Make Moves. So I'm just labeling it like Make Moves, episode 1, 2, 3, etc., giving some detail, kind of like a podcast type show notes. And then, yeah, you'll see them all SoundCloud, and eventually I'll get them on my blog, and always share them on Instagram too. So trying to make everybody happy with all the various different platforms available. So this week I sent out a newsletter, and I shared a story about just how one of the things, whenever people ask me about my athletes and like working with them, one of the things I always emphasize is that what makes them really good, one, they're already really good. They're talented. Those high-level athletes, they just have an underlying skill and talent. But also they work really hard, and the ones I work with are really good about putting a team of people around them to help them achieve their goals. They understand that they cannot do what they do, meet their goals, meet their dreams without support. Like, are they capable of doing it on their own? Meaning, do they have the internal motivation to put in the work? Yes. Do they understand how to train? Probably by that time, yes. Do they, in fact, a lot of my athletes can probably coach people better than a ton of the personal trainers out there, just because of their experience in it. So, but what they do is they do a good job of realizing like that some people can do it better than them, and that it takes a village to, really help support and raise somebody, or get them to achieve their goals. So I happen to be a type of person who has always been independent, and I always feel like I can take care of everything that I need, and why would I get help when I can just do it now and take care of things? So this is probably a a habit I picked up from my mom, who was a single parent and also had that mentality of just taking care of it. She was fully capable. She taught us how to take care of so many things in life. And she was always taking care of other people and not necessarily taking care of herself very well. So I've shared in the past that story about how when she passed away, I realized that that was her habit, and I realized that I had a tendency to do that, and I wanted to make a change. So I really started putting myself first and taking care of myself better, making it a priority more so than it used to be. But it's one of those things that I was still kind of stuck in that thought process of I had to do everything on my own, or not had to, I wanted to do everything on my own because then I had control over it, and a million excuses why I thought I needed to be independent. So, and that includes in my business, my personal life, everything. I was like rarely asked for help. So this year I've been taking a page out of my athlete's book and following my instructions to them and surrounding myself with a team of people to help me. So I've been better about asking for help from friends and family, and then hiring help. So, but hiring help, it's still me being independent, taking care of things, but it is a form of asking for help. It is asking for help and realizing that other people's help is very valuable, and so paying for it. And one of the things this year that made the biggest difference, besides, for my business, I hired some business coaches and been doing a ton of business development stuff, which has been huge in terms of re-inspiring me, rethinking about like what I have to offer the world and how I want to continue to move my business forward. And you'll probably have already seen me doing more and more for my business this year, but next year in 2019, I'll be able to share even more, which I'm super excited about. But also in my own health, I've been better this year about hiring people to take care of me. The hard part is being in the field of rehab and movement and body work, strength and conditioning. There's a tendency to be like, oh, whatever, I'll just take care of those things myself because I'm fully capable. And I finally decided that I needed some support, wanted some support. So I hired some people to be my coaches, and it was like one of the best decisions I made this year. And the thing is once I found somebody that I knew I could trust, and I was not worried about necessarily like body mechanics, biomechanics, that kind of thing, injury risk. It was so nice to like let go of the need to do it myself and let go of like needing to think all the time. So it was like the act of just being able to show up, turn off my brain, and just move and take care of my body and do rehab and like feel good was like so great. And so I just think there's so much value in that, asking for help, hiring help when needed, buying different programs, like just taking out the what's the word I'm trying to think, like taking out the thinking that needs to be involved in creating your own program, moving your body in a certain way, like having to figure out what to do today. And so it's been so great. So great. I love getting my program from my coach, or just showing up to their house and him telling me what to do. It's awesome. So, in the spirit of growing my business too, coming up on Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, all the sales stuff, I decided, that is the cool thing about the 14-day and 30-day mindful movement programs that I have put together in the past and have on Vimeo on demand, is that's what it does. It teaches you how to cultivate awareness in your body, move mindfully, show up for yourself with kindness and compassion. And that's a thing though. Like it takes the brain work out of what you need to do for the day. It takes the thought process out of it all. And so what I've done is, for the holiday sale I am running, I have bundled those two programs, so the 14-day program and the 30-day program. I bundled together for the cost of just the 30-day program. And so that's my gift to you, is the opportunity to show up, make some moves, cultivate a practice of self-care, and connect with me. So I hope you take advantage of it. I'll drop it in the notes, the link to the sale. It goes through Saturday, which is Small Business Saturday. And on that thought process too, I was like, you know what, since tis the season of creating sales, I am offering 25% off of my cervical spine workshop. That's also on Vimeo on demand for all you sports healthcare providers that want to do some online education. and see what I've put together for my neck training program. So just figured I was putting a sale on, I might as well do it for both taking care of yourself personally and professionally. So I hope you take advantage of that. Let me know, give me some feedback, those of you who've done the program. Also give me feedback. I know along the way I've gotten good feedback in general from people during when it was a challenge that I hosted, as well as the people who have bought it. And so, yeah, I just love to be able to be that person for you, like my coaches have been for me, to take the thought process out of it, give you a great program that you can count on that makes your body and mind feel good. And so all you have to do is show up. And that is, one, the easiest part, and two, actually the most powerful part of all of this self-care practice anyways, is just committing to show up. So hopefully taking out the excuse of having to figure out what program to do. Anyways, that's my share on that. I feel like I had something more exciting to tell you around that, but I think not really. Just that I hope you take advantage, because it's a great deal, and I don't know if I'm going to have those programs around forever, and so take advantage of it while you can. Also, with my newsletters, theme is being consistent to showing up. I'm trying to be more consistent, sending out the newsletters, so far on a good roll. And I switched the format a little bit to be more like an email to you than an actual boring newsletter. So give me some feedback on that too. Let me know what you like. So far, in the last few that I've sent, I'm getting more people responding to me, like writing me back as if it was an email, which that's what I love, because at the end of the day, I love connecting with people. And so that's why I switched the format of the newsletter, because I thought maybe it would feel more like an authentic connection and an opportunity to create more conversation from the email, because we all get a million emails a day, and so I want to make sure that if I'm sending you something to fill up your inbox, that it's worthwhile reading, that it adds to your day, adds to your experience, and makes you feel like we are connected, because that's what I want. I don't want it to feel like it's just another business email clogging up your inbox. So with that said, I'll move on to some of the questions I had for today. So I asked on Instagram, actually, if anybody had questions, and I got a couple. My friend Steph wanted me to talk about the spinal engine. So we'll talk about that first. The spinal engine, it is let's see, I'll read her exact question. It says, talk to me about spinal engine. So spinal engine is a book and a movement model from Serge Gradabowski. So his book's called The Spinal Engine. He is a biomechanist, scientist in Canada, I think in Montreal area. And his work is pretty awesome. So the original book came out in 1987. This is actually an updated version from 2008. I first heard about his work through I think through Philip Beach. He uses his information in his contractile field model. And then I also got the opportunity, which I'm so grateful for, to hear Serge talk at the last International Fascial Research Congress in 2015. And so he talked about his model, and then just the model of medicine right now, and the need to collaborate more, which is always a theme at that conference, which is cool. But anyways, so Steph, I will answer you to the best of my ability, but I thought too, like, why not let Serge answer a little bit what the spinal engine is and read the detail of the book. So it says this book deals with the human spine with particular emphasis on the lumbar spine. Human gait is traditionally believed to be the exclusive function of the legs, but this book presents arguments and data that challenge this belief. It proposes that the spine is the primary engine that makes us move. This engine, inherited from our fish ancestors, was never transferred to the extremities during our long evolutionary journey. From the theoretical and clinical analysis of normal function of the spine, one can describe the changes that degrade its function. This forces us to define normality in terms of functionality rather than anatomical perfection. A procedure for the objective measure of the spinal function is proposed, and its clinical use is discussed. So basically, he has this huge long textbook that's basically like a biomechanics class or physics class, detailing this idea that the spine is what moves the legs. And that is the approach that I take, because it's the one that I've seen make the biggest difference in people's gait and make the biggest difference in people's dynamic alignment and movement efficiency. And so, you know, I adapted this model, or used this model, not adapted necessarily, from my time with learning from Elizabeth Larkham. It's really her approach on gait as well, and utilizing kind of the information or the theories from the anatomy trains, fascial slings, and then Phillips' model of movement, the contractile field theory. His mirrors that as well, and it's based upon that the spine is what moves the legs. And you can actually walk without legs, right? So if you didn't have legs, but you had a pelvis, you can actually still walk. And there's video of people who are in that case, do not have legs, are amputated, but are walking in a fairly normal gait via the pelvis and the trunk. So the contractile field theory, the arms and the legs, the limbs, come out of the helical field. And the helical field is the rotational field. And so the limbs are actually amplifiers of trunk rotation. So if you look at embryologically and how the body is put together, the legs are not the bottom of the body. The bottom of the body is the bottom. The legs actually bud out above the bottom, right? So they're higher up in our body than the bottom is. And so though we balance on top of them, they are still amplifiers of that rotation. And so if you can really clean up the relationship of the pelvis and the thorax rotating on each other with good dynamic alignment in terms of how much flexion or extension you have in the spine, then the arms and the legs become amplifiers of that. And then the body is on top of the legs, and it's the body that's walking you as opposed to being behind yourself, weight on your heels, legs pulling you forward is a really inefficient walking pattern. So the best visual I give for this when I teach it is, you know that I have it somewhere, but obviously I'm not going to grab it for this talk, but when I give lectures on it, I talk about it in terms of that rotation. When it's amplified, we just sort of create a lift-off, and literally sort of it's the unwinding of that rotation that walks the legs and creates that efficient pattern, along with some other efficiencies in the legs of being springs, etc. So the toy I talk about is the stick with the propeller blades on it. So when you spin the stick and create rotation, the propeller blades amplify it and create the lift, right? So that's exactly how our body works as well. When you efficiently can rotate around your spine and get arms swinging along, get the pelvis locomoting into that way, then the legs and arms become amplifiers of the rotation. So, and that's really what makes us human, is that bipedal rotational pattern. why this is so important is it's a completely different approach of improving people's gait and dynamics. It's a more proximal approach to it, and it's so huge in people with spinal cord injury or amputations, where that people who wear prosthetics, because when you can start to get the gait pattern originating from the spine, they actually dynamically load the legs or the prosthetics a little bit better and have a much more efficient gait, which costs them less energy, which is so important, right, when we're talking about being an efficient mover. So, great book. I will, the powerful thing too, and you can kind of feel it, and I demonstrate this in classes, in the seated long sit position. So seated on the floor with your legs out in front of you, there's a it's a work from Philip Beach, he describes how it's part of one of the early patterns that the baby starts to locomote is when you're sitting in a long sit, if you want to go forward, you have to create spine extension in order to move forward. If you stay in a flex spine and start moving your pelvis side to side, you'll actually end up moving, locomoting backwards. And so that is the concept of the spinal engine. When our lumbar spine is in its more neutral position, which is extension, our pelvis then, when it rotates, creates a locomotion forward. When our spine is more in a flexed position, when our pelvis moves, our body sort of wants to go back. And so there's this mismatch because obviously most of the time we are walking forwards. And so then our legs become the way that we move ourselves forward in space. Our legs pull our body forward instead of coming along for the ride and keeping our bodies upright on it. So that long sit pelvic walking ends up being a great tool to not only stretch out the hamstrings in a more normal fashion, but begin to work on that locomotion, the rotation, the pelvic figure eight motion that occurs through a normal gait pattern and from a proximal control standpoint. So that's what I know about the spinal engine. Hopefully that answered your question, Steph. Disclaimer, I have not read the full book. Much like my experience in physics and biomechanics in college, when I start seeing a lot of free body diagrams, my brain starts hurting, and so then I lose interest. And so it's one of those things that is much better learned in a lecture format with the person actually teaching it to you. So, or another person teaching it to you. But it's definitely a model of movement. And like any scientific model, there might be parts that are really correct and there might be parts that are not correct. In my practice, anecdotally with my people, when I apply these concepts, they seem to make the biggest change in a positive direction of making movement look and feel more efficient. And so I'm going to continue with the spinal engine model. All right, next question I got was about the neck. The neck, let me pull it up. It is, what's your go-to exercise for self-care for the neck and the scalenes? So, obviously the scalenes are muscles in your neck. They're deep muscles. They run kind of anterior and lateral from the cervical spine to the first and second ribs. And then there's a lot of other stuff on the neck. So, because I talked about it earlier too, this is great to remind you of that sale I have going on of the 25% off of my cervical spine health workshop, where I discuss my thoughts about the neck in general. So, from a self-care standpoint, I'm guessing people are asking about self-care for the neck because they have neck pain. Or maybe they have tightnesses, or perhaps a massage therapist or physical therapist or athletic trainer, some body worker told them that they had tight scalenes. Maybe they have thoracic outlet syndrome and have symptoms in their hands and arms. Those are probably some common things, maybe headaches, migraines, or whatever. Eye strain. Those are all things that sometimes people are like, oh, I need some advice on my neck. From a self-care standpoint with the neck, it's important to appreciate what often causes problems around the neck. So, first of all, an appreciation that the shoulder blades, the scapula, and the relationship to the neck have a huge relationship. So, if the shoulder blades are in a depressed position, meaning the clavicle angle is parallel to the ground or in a downward angle, so the sternoclavicular joint, that bump on the front of your chest, right below your neck, kind of by your throat, if those bones, those lumps, are higher up than, or level or higher up than the tip of your shoulder, that would be a depressed or downwardly rotated shoulder blade. Pause here. Depression and downward rotation are not the same thing, but from the front, they look similar. Okay? So you would have to confirm on some points in the back if it was depressed or downwardly rotated. There are some similarities of those two things. Neither of them are ideal for a resting dynamic alignment of the upper extremity on the torso. And oftentimes when your shoulder blade is depressed or downwardly rotated, those muscles that attach to the shoulder and shoulder blade also attach to the neck. So it ends up being like the wire hanger scenario. This is how I explain it for people in my office, when I had an office, when I'm working with people. Is we've all had the experience maybe that we have a wire hanger that you got from like the dry cleaner or something, right? And you put something heavy on it, like a heavy sweater maybe, and the ends of the wire hanger start drooping down. And as the ends of the wire hanger start drooping down, the neck, the curve of the neck of the hanger, right, the part of the hanger that looks like a question mark, it starts to straighten out and lose its curve, right, as everything else is pulling down on it. And hopefully you can get that visual how when the sides of the hanger are getting pulled down, the amount of tension and strain that is created on the neck of the hanger, right? Or in this case, your body. So as my shoulder blades get depressed or downwardly rotated and my neck becomes really long, it also increases the amount of tension and throws off the normal curve of the dynamic alignment of the neck. That means you end up running out of available range of motion for movement, as well as just the added tensions from the force or weight of the shoulder blades going down. So you have two scenarios that create some abnormal forces across the neck and the joints of the neck that may create pain. So, because remember, there is a law of motion that is, if you take up range of motion in one plane, then you're going to be now limited in the other planes of motion, because we only have a certain degree of total motion available at joints. And so that's why it's important to be starting in that neutral position, is because in neutral we have the most degrees of freedom available for movement. So for example, if my neck, if I'm in that scenario where I have depressed shoulders and my neck is really long, right? All of my scalenes are on a stretch. My upper trap is on a stretch. I'm changing the pressure within the space. So the neck is one of our cavities of pressure area. And so by dropping it down, I'm narrowing the space, which is going to increase the pressure. And so all of the structures in that area that are organs are fluid structures, where fluid needs to go from the head to the chest, they get compromised. And so that creates pain. Plus, the neck is supposed to be a lordosis, so it's supposed to be resting in extension. But when you put all that tension on it, it takes it into flexion. And then when you go to flex, you feel like you're running out of range of motion because you're already there. Does that make sense? So it's like if I'm turned to the left or to the right and I want to go more right rotation, if I think this is neutral and I go to the right, I'm going to think I'm lacking right rotation, but it's just because I'm starting there. That's where neutral is in that case. And so it gives the illusion like I'm tight in that direction. So same thing with flexion. If my spine is already in a relatively flat position, I'm already starting in flexion. So then when I bring my head down, I'm going to feel really tight, like I have a tight neck. And then so what do people do? They try to stretch it into that direction, right? That's sometimes I'm like, that's why for as smart as our bodies are, sometimes the only message that we get or the only way we have to describe what's going on is tight. And so instantly when people think tight, sorry about that, my phone died. That's a technical problem. So continue. So I was talking about how the neck, when the neck is in that lengthened position and it's tight, because our brain just interprets it as a tight, so we go to stretch it, and then we actually are exacerbating the problem. So first, then, I would say the first thing that we need to do in this scenario from a self-care standpoint, what to do to take care of the neck, is to restore the position of our shoulder blades. Encourage some upper rotation and elevation to widen the space, decrease the pressure on all the important contents that might be causing some adverse symptoms, and then to let our neck be in a more neutral position or an extended position, right? So that's number one. Number two kind of goes back to what I was alluding with the pressure changes and what happens when we decrease the space in our neck. When we decrease the space in our neck actually has a ton of neurovascular structures, a ton of organs, which partly are those neurovascular structures, a ton of lymph. It has so much stuff in it that is more important than the actual muscles in the joints, if that makes sense, right? There's a ton of nerves, there's a ton of blood vessels that are important. This is like a really important spot because it's linking our two most important organs, our brain, our nervous system, and our heart, our cardiovascular system. And so most of the time, the muscles, right, the muscles are protecting something more important than the muscle. The muscles often are protecting the organs because the organs are the most important part of the body. So if the nerves and the vascular structures are not able to easily glide and move through the neck, muscles, fascia, around the bones and joints, then the muscles go into a protective pattern. And then, yeah, you can do soft tissue to release them. And they'll stop protecting for a second, but then as soon as the body can kind of reset itself, it goes back into that protection mode because again, the organs are under pressure or tension, which they do not like. And so in order to sometimes get the scalenes to relax, what we need to do is realize what organs are there. Our brachial plexus is between the scalenes. Our pleural dome ligaments, which is the ligaments of our lungs, are right there. And there's some important vascular structures in the area too. And then the vagus nerve comes right down in front of there as well. The phrenic nerve comes down there, down near there. So there's a lot of important neurovascular structures. It's also right next to your trachea and your esophagus. And so oftentimes they're tight because those things are not happy. And so my first go-to, instead of actually doing like a lot of soft tissue in there and trying to get the muscles to turn off, is restore the position of our shoulder blades, improve the pressure relationship of the space of our neck, and then maybe we'll go into some nerve glide stuff. This is where I'm going to name drop my friend Missy Bunch, Ryan Steenrod with Death at the Desk. They've got some great drills for some active nerve glides that are going to be helpful sometimes in this scenario. But I would argue that until you can restore the position of your shoulder blades, I would avoid those nerve glides at first. So primary thing, improve the relationship of your shoulder blades to your neck and your head. Then perhaps add some nerve glides, some other thoracic mobility, focus on breathing, because again, our scalenes can also be tight because they are trying to be our breathing muscles when the rest of our three-dimensional breathing patterns are not there. So kind of a lot of stuff. The neck can seem complicated, but everything you're doing kind of is reinforcing a similar thing. So I'd improve three-dimensional breathing patterns of our rib cage. Improve the shoulder blade position, relationship of shoulder blades to head and neck. And then add in some focused stuff on the organs. So some breath work with humming, some singing, some chanting, perhaps. All really good things for the trachea. Can even add in some swallowing when we're doing stuff too with the esophagus. Maybe add in some dynamic nerve glide type stuff with my friends from the Desk of the Desk. But a different approach than necessarily just poking into those tight muscles. The muscles are tight for a reason. So we have to figure out why they're tight in order to have a better approach about it. So if you want to learn more about general sort of my thought processes around neck health and neck training, you can check out that cervical spine workshop that is on sale this week until Saturday for Small Business Saturday, Black Friday. It's 25% off. I will drop the code and everything in the notes. Sorry about the freaking shut off between the first video and the second video. My fault for not having my phone fully charged. That's life. I will try to, fingers crossed that other video saved automatically. And then I'll take both the videos, splice them together, and put them up on YouTube, post them on here again so you have the full video. As well as the audio, I will add to my SoundCloud, so if you want to listen to it as more of like a podcast type thing, that's it too. So I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to be doing these lives every week. Fridays, Wednesdays. Let me know what day you like better. I don't know. I'm kind of open to it. The only days I can't always do are Monday and Tuesday. And the rest of the week I'm pretty open, fair game for anything. Yeah. Have a wonderful, wonderful, happy Thanksgiving if you are in the United States. For all of my non-United States people, I got a lot of Canadians that follow along, and a few other countries too. I just hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And yeah, let me know. Give me some thoughts. I always love adapting what I give for you. You have way more ideas of what needs to be talked about than I do, by far. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Love you. Bye.